Yeah, Rampion 2 update. Broadly speaking, I'll speak for about half an hour, perhaps, something like that. I hope that's okay. Broadly speaking, I'll split the presentation into two. The first element will be looking at the project elements that we have now fixed. So things have changed offshore and things have changed with the onshore substation, but those are now fixed in place, and we'll be taking those into our development consent order application. Now that's the technical way of saying planning application, but because this is a nationally significant infrastructure project, it goes through via the Planning Act 2008 to be determined under the development consent order. So if you hear me throughout this presentation saying DCO application, essentially that's the planning application. So the offshore elements are now fixed. I'll talk to you about those. But then, as Anne mentioned, we are launching a targeted consultation looking at potential changes to the onshore cable route proposals. So we'll have a look at that as well. So this is how what I'll speak about. I'll briefly recap the first statutory consultation that we held last year. Look at those fixed elements in turn, and then just briefly mention why Rampion 2 is even more critical now than it was this time last year. I'm sure you can guess why, and then look at this, introduce you to this targeted onshore consultation, how you can get involved and where you can find more information. And then I'll finish with a look at the indicative timetable for the project before handing back to Anne to chair any Q&A. So, yeah, we started actually back early last year with a non-statutory consultation, which we ran for 4 weeks, largely to sort of raise awareness of the project, but also to consult and find out views on this redline boundary, what we call a scoping boundary. So this is the largest sort of area we were looking at. And we explained back then, actually, look, this is a design evolution process. We're not having a third go. This is Rampion 2. There won't be a Rampion 3. I've said it publicly and on record many times. We're having one more look at this. Hence, we wanted to explore the widest possible area we could. And then obviously go through consultation, look at environmental issues through our environmental surveys, same with engineering, and then refine the project as we go forward before we then submit our final proposals in our DCO application. As a result of that first early consultation early last year, we actually took out this area to the east and southeast here, and a slither to the west as well. And that was rather on the west side to just aimed a navigation route there, and on the east and southeast, some concerns about views from the Heritage Coast, pretty much from Burling Gap through Seven Sisters to Beachy Head, and some concerns about the route to Shoreham Port from the traffic separation scheme from the English Channel, basically the shipping lane there. So already it just demonstrates consultation does make a difference. We do listen to feedback and we try and improve the project where we can. So that was already taken off before we went through our statutory public consultation, which we held for 9 weeks from July through to September last year. Now, it was brought to our attention that we missed some addresses which we had intended would receive some consultation flyers to promote the consultation. So we actually reopened the consultation, did it again with exactly the same materials early this year for another 9 weeks. So 2 bites of the cherry, really. So after all that consultation, we attracted 12,500 visits to rampion2.com during the consultation window. That's where all the consultation materials were. And I'm pleased to say we actually had over 1,700 written responses to the consultation. And that's actually an increase of around 200 compared to the original Rampion project, which we consulted on a whole decade ago, would you believe? Now, in terms of consultation feedback, there's some high-level feedback, actually, which is now available on the website. And if I forget to mention it shortly, do pick me up on that. I'll tell you where it is on the website. And that's just split the feedback into high-level themes related to the project-wide concerns or issues raised, offshore-specific, onshore-specific, and then the onshore substation. But a full detailed report is an essential and integral part of the DCO application. So a detailed consultation report with all that feedback, the analysis, our analysis of that feedback, and what we've done to try and take that into account, all in our consultation report, which will be submitted as part of the DCO application. And yeah, at the bottom there, just thanks to everyone for getting involved. You know, this is all about, this isn't about us as a company, this is about Sussex, and I love it. No, you know, nothing more than when I'm on the beach and I hear people say, look, that's our wind farm, that's the Worthing wind farm, that's the Brighton wind farm, that's the Newhaven wind farm. I mean, that's what you want to hear, really. It's about the community feeling a connection to the scheme. Right then, so then the results of this, the feedback from the statutory consultation last summer and early this year, offshore, is that we've taken off another large chunk here. So we started off with this green line boundary early last year, and then we went into consultation with this purple line boundary here. And then as the result of feedback, we've actually now got this red line boundary here. So we've chopped off this area to the east, quite a large chunk to the east and southeast. We've taken another 10 square kilometers off the west side, and we've got these two sort of areas here, which are part of the red line boundary, but they will not have turbines in them. So the area with turbines now, going forward into DCO application, will be these two blue hatched areas here. Now, this is largely due to feedback from the public consultation, from the community, from statutory organisations, such as South Downs National Park Authority, Natural England and the like. And we've tried to address the feedback with 4 design principles. So this is largely due to the visual effect, visual impact, for example. And one of those issues was to do with proximity. So the distance from, in particular, this heritage coastline again, which runs roughly along here around Seven Sisters. So we've therefore moved it further away. Another issue was to do with what they called sort of clutter of the mixing between the smaller turbines of the existing Rampion project and what will be larger turbines, because the technology has advanced such a rapid rate, connected to the Rampion 2 scheme. So there were some concerns about having the larger turbines in front of the smaller turbines when viewed from the heritage coast. So that's why this triangle was going to go anyway. That's 2 design principles. Another issue was connected to the field of view. So at various points along the coast, for example, if you're in Worthing here, east to west, there was some concerns about, can you narrow the field of view somewhat? So by taking off this east chunk and this west chunk, we've managed to reduce the field of view. And another issue raised was some kind of separation of the wind farm from the Rampion wind farm that's operating now to the new Rampion 2 wind farm. Hence you see these 2 no turbines, no structure areas, these white corridors, if you like. Now, these white corridors have the additional benefit to aid navigation, particularly from the English Channel shipping lane through to Little Hampton Harbour. And of course, the added benefit of removing this east chunk is you've now got a direct route from the English Channel shipping lane through to Shoreham port. Yeah, okay, so I think I'll leave it on that for now. But if you then take that red line boundary as now is and will be submitted to the DCO application, this is what you see. And also, just skipping back a second, look at the green area we started with, the purple area we consulted on, and now the red line boundary, and also the turbine specific areas where we put the turbines. This is the change in numbers. We started with 315 square kilometers. Then early last year, we reduced it down to 270. We consulted statutory consultation on 195. Sorry, we reduced it now to 195. But in terms of the turbine array area, the only area we'll put turbines, we've reduced it to 160. So we're looking at now an area around half the size of what we started with. In terms of how that affects turbine numbers and size, well, it doesn't affect the turbine size at all. We've always been talking about a maximum of up to 325 meters to tip, rotor diameter 295. And the reason for that maximum is because we can't risk consenting a white elephant, consenting something that we simply could not purchase in the marketplace when we come to procure these turbines, which, by the way, won't be till 2026. And we started this process a couple of years ago. So there's a lot, quite a long period of time there. We do talk to turbine suppliers and manufacturers all the time to get an understanding of the marketplace and where it might be in 2026. So that's why we've got this maximum tip height of 325 meters. That doesn't mean, by the way, that we will build to 325 meters, but we've got to keep that flexibility at this stage in the process. Just to put some context on Rampion 1, we got consent for turbines up to 210 meters tall. We ended up erecting turbines at 140 meters tall. So we've got a future proof against what will be available in the marketplace from 2026 when we're looking to procure. Now, we've reduced the maximum turbine numbers from what was going to be 116, which is the same as you see operating right now offshore, to a maximum now of 90. That's 26 fewer than we have at Rampion. Now, if we did go for the largest turbines, for example, we wouldn't even need 90, or maybe 70 or something like that. So the maximum number of turbines, 90, and that would be if it was the smaller end of what we're going for. But the good news is, while we've reduced the sea area, reduced the maximum number of turbines, we can still generate 1,200 megawatts of power, which means we can still generate clean, renewable electricity for over 1 million homes, and we can still maximize the potential of the site because the grid connection agreement is for 1,200 megawatts. We couldn't build more than 1,200 anyway because there's no capacity left on the grid beyond that. Okay, another fixed change that we've made, but this change has been made on the back of feedback from the consultation, probably of less interest to the Shoreham Society, but I'll briefly touch on it anyway. We actually started looking at 7 potential sites for a substation. We need the substation, by the way, to transform the power up from 150 kilovolts to 400 kilovolts before we connect into the electron motorway, the high voltage transmission grid, which runs broadly from Southampton through to northern Kent and then into London. So that's the electron motorway, if you like. It takes large power generators like nuclear, gas, coal, and the likes of Rampion 1 and 2. So we have to connect there. We had to transform the power up. We started with 7 potential substation sites. We reduced it down to 3 when we first consulted early last year. As a result of that consultation feedback, we reduced it down to 2. And then we formally consulted in the statutory consultation last summer on these 2 sites here, Bolney Road, Kent Street, and Wynham Lane North. Wynham Lane North got more negative feedback from the community consultation, but also for us, it's constrained a little bit more. You can probably see there, it's slightly smaller, but it's also constrained in shape. It's quite narrow. And you don't just need the permanent above ground structure, the substation structure. You also need during construction to have lay down areas where you can store your equipment. You have your project management facility there, modular buildings and so on. You need access arrangements as well during construction. So it was a bit tight, it was a bit tricky, and it wasn't particularly liked as much from the local community. So again, consultation working in practice. So as a long and short of it is, we have now decided that Bolney Road, Kent Street will be in yellow here, will be our onshore substation site. And we've actually renamed it Oakendene, and that's largely because a lot of the comments that we received from the local community referring to it as Oakendene. It's also next to the Oakendene Industrial Estate. So that's the other element that we have now fixed, and we'll go to the DCO application. Now, before I talk about the onshore cable route consultation we've just launched on Tuesday, I wanted to highlight why Rampion 2 is now even more critical than it was last year when I did lots of public speaking like this. Now, if you heard me last year, some of this slide you'll have heard already. The UK government had already declared a climate emergency. We already had the Paris Climate Agreement, which was a 68% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. when compared to 1990 levels. The government already had a target to quadruple offshore wind capacity from what was 10 gigawatts in 2020 to 40 gigawatts by 2030. Now, that's been superseded again. So the government now wants 50 gigawatts by the end of this decade. Bear in mind, it took us 20 years to get to the first 10 gigawatts. Okay, and now in the next 10 years, well, now 8 years, we want to get us to 50 gigawatts. So it's a really tall order. So sometimes you might hear people, and I'm happy to answer the question about, oh, let's put them all in the North Sea. Not possible. We can't afford any attrition. This is a tall order as it is. Happy to answer that question in more detail when we get to the Q&A. But also we need more renewables because, of course, we're phasing out, as you mentioned, coal. Last bit of coal is about 2%, 3% still on the system for generating electricity. That's been phased out in the next 18 months or so. And of course, we now need a hydrogen economy. We've got loads of electric vehicles driving around now, which is fantastic news. And people are talking about air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps to heat people's homes, which is, again, fantastic news. But that all needs electricity. And for those technologies to be truly clean and green, that electricity must be generated from renewables. We've got the 2050 net zero target, far too far in the future as far as I'm concerned. We've got to concentrate on 2030, otherwise it's a done deal, really. But of course, as you all know as well, sadly, we've got this terrible invasion of Ukraine going on, and that's affecting all our electricity prices. The reason is because gas is still used in Europe and in the UK to generate electricity. Increasing the cost of gas is increasing the wholesale cost of electricity. But the good news is that long-term, wind energy does and is pushing the cost of electricity down, although I fully appreciate, I'm with you all, that at the moment you probably won't feel that, but it is. And that's why we need to take advantage of this windiest country in Europe, that's the UK. We are an island. We've got all this offshore potential. So let's get on and deliver more wind energy, use this indigenous free source of energy and drive the cost down of electricity even further. In terms of some of these numbers then, Rampion 1 is already generating electricity for around 350,000 homes. That's half the homes in the whole of Sussex, East and West Sussex combined, plus Brighton and Hove. Rampion 2 could do 1 million more homes on top of that. Put another way, and this needs to be corroborated, but an ex-colleague of ours, I still need to get on top of this, sent us some information, done their own research, and is suggesting that the data is there to demonstrate that Rampion 1 and 2 combined will generate all the electricity needs for the whole of Sussex. So that's domestic, industry, commerce, offices, businesses, hospitals, schools, transport networks, and so on. So we need to just confirm that, but isn't that amazing? If you just look at a map of the southeast of England and you blot out, colour in blue or something, East and West Sussex, Brighton and Hove, it's massive. We all know how densely populated it is. And these two wind farms together could power all the electricity needs of that whole area. I think that's amazing. Obviously, we're saving loads of CO2. Will be nearly 2 million tonnes of CO2 saved every year for the lifetime of the project. For Rampion 2, by the way, it's probably about 30 to 35 years. And that's on top of what we already saved from Rampion 1. We have a Rampion fund managed by Sussex Community Foundation, and we've got every intention of doing something similar for Rampion 2. It's too early to say the details, but absolutely we will be doing something similar. And obviously all the jobs during construction and operation, happy to discuss that further when we come to Q&A. But yeah, we launched on Tuesday morning another 6-week consultation. And this again is on the back of the feedback that we've received from the previous statutory consultation. So we're looking at some potential changes to the cable route. Yeah, this is all available, like last time, at rampion2.com. So we've tried to, if you look on the right-hand side of the slide there, that might look familiar. That's because it's largely the same format as what we did last time around. So we're hoping you will find it more familiar if you've looked at our consultation materials last year. So it's all there, 6 weeks from Tuesday to the 29th of November. The consultation materials are in the form of a consultation booklet, which I'll talk through in a moment, which we hope is readily accessible and easy to digest. We've also got a series of work plans, but if you want more detail, there's the PSIR. We call it the PSIR because it's a mouthful. It's the Preliminary Environmental Information Report, Supplementary Information Report. So it's the supplement to what we had last year, basically. And you can see the various sort of environmental assessment of these potential changes. If you click on, and I'm going to go through the consultation proposals in more detail in the slides to come, but if you click on this consultation events button, I'm pleased to say in touch wood that we're going to be having 4 face-to-face events along the cable route in early November. These are on the 1st, the 2nd, the 11th and the 12th of November. They're on the cable route, and we have them running south to north. One is in Arran Yacht Club and Littlehampton Harbour there. One is in Arundel Town Hall. One Washington Memorial Village Hall in Washington Village, and one Ashurst Village Hall. So the dates and time, they're all from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. So if you're at work, you can come in the evening and you can meet the project team and have a chat with us, look at some really large maps in detail, and yeah, ask any questions you like. And there'll be some consultation response forms available there, but you can also fill in your consultation response form by clicking Have Your Say here in bottom middle, most important button on the website, Have Your Say, and you can fill that in online. If you want to print it off and send it free post, you can do that. I'll explain why and how later. That information that I previously was talking about, the changes to the offshore wind farm and the onshore substation decision, what we've now fixed. If you click on what we've now fixed, you can see further information about that. If you want to know more about the consenting and consultation process, you can click on the button there about the consent process. And other information, bottom right-hand side, that's got 12 videos about how we constructed the Rampion project, videos and animations. It's also got information about how we reinstate the cable route, which you'll notice you can't see anymore. Stuff about our community benefit fund there as well, and the visitor centre on Brighton Seafront, just next to the I-360. So plenty of information. I'll talk more about the proposals in a moment, but if you want to contact us about the project or the consultation, you can email us at the usual email address there, or use the free phone number. So the proposals in a bit more detail then. If you click on that consultation proposals button, you will be able to see our consultation booklet, which outlines all these potential changes. And the potential changes are set out in a number of different ways. You've got alternative cable routes, which are essentially like a departure, a detached cable route, detached from the original, and go into basically new territory that we haven't consulted on before. And 2 of these alternative cable routes are particularly long. So we've used a really clever acronym and really clever terminology. We're calling them long alternative cable routes. Now, there are also what we call modified routes. These are much more sort of low key. They might be adjacent to what we consulted on last year. It might be something like, for example, moving the cable route from one side of a farmer's field to the other to help them protect their crop. It might be just to give us a bit more flexibility about how we can construct the cable route when we come to construction. Now, we're also consulting on some trenchless crossings. That's where you drill underneath perhaps the road or the railway to help keep traffic and transport moving, or drill underneath the beach or the River Arun or the River Ada or another environmentally sensitive spot such as ancient woodland. And that's all to try and reduce any disturbance on the surface. So you can have a look at those trenchless crossings as well and where they're located. Obviously, we need access arrangements, both during construction to bring the construction vehicles to site and unload materials and so on. And then during operation, very, very occasionally, you might need a man with a van or something like that. So these access routes are also described in the consultation booklet. So you can look at the booklet in terms of the maps of the areas, brief descriptions of these changes, and also a brief outline of the potential environmental impacts. There's an interactive map I'll show you in a moment, so you don't have to wade through this entire document. You can just click on the section of the map that's of most interest to you, and it will take you to that part of the cable route. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, if you really want more detail, there's plenty of detail. If you want to look at birds or noise, wildlife, landscape, it's all in there in the Peer Sur. So this is what you will come across pretty much the opening. You've got this contents page here with these 7 areas mirrored here on the right on the interactive map. So you could click on any part of this map. Let's go for area 2 down just north of Littlehampton here. And here we are, example of area 2. You'll have a larger scale map here, but again with some inset boxes. So on area 2, you've got 6 inset boxes. So you can identify, again, where you're particularly interested in, just north of Littlehampton, around the railway tracks. You can click on that, and then you will outpop the larger scale map of the area just south of Lyminster. It's color coordinated, so you can see this alternative cable route. This is the original cable route. This is the alternative. And they're all numbered and with the acronyms: alternative access number 4 here, alternative cable route number 2 here, and so on. And then you just look below the map and it's got a brief description of the change and a brief outline of the potential environmental impacts. In terms of how we've promoted the consultation, as I say, it's quite targeted. What we're really aiming for here is people who live or work or visit the potential changes and the original cable route area. So we've targeted this area in pink. In red, you've got the cable route, and these are the long alternative cable routes here, and some access arrangements here. So we've sent leaflets to everywhere within this pink boundary. We put posters up, and we've done an email blast to stakeholder groups and to our project liaison group members, parish councils, local authorities, and so on. And we're encouraging people to put this information on your social media networks, in your newsletters, and things like that. Right. If you do, by the way, yes, if you would like to put any posters up, or you'd like to put a social media post up on your social media page, can you just please make a note of this email address here? This is Paula Seeger. Some of you might be aware of Paula from Natural PR. She does lots of work around Sussex, and she's been working with us on Rampion 2 for donkey's years now. Paula at naturalpr.biz. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you. The whole point about this consultation exercise is so that we can reduce the impact. It's very temporary impact, by the way. You dig a trench, you lay the ducting, fill the trench, and then at a later date you come and pull the cable through. So hopefully you've seen it reinstates very quickly. There's no pylons or anything like that for the cable route. But nevertheless, the temporary impacts we want to reduce as far as possible. So do go online and complete our consultation response form. You can submit it at rampion2.com. You can download it from the website, complete it, and then email it to us, or you can print it out and write it in by hand and post it, free post, Rampion 2. So we'll be considering all this feedback alongside the feedback we've already received from the original consultation. And then we'll make a decision on our final proposals that we're going to submit to the planning inspectorate, we think around March next year. So this is the final slide. This is the indicative timeline for the project. We'll go through this consultation, review all the feedback, finalize our proposals and our environmental statement and our consultation report, and submit all that in around March next year. We then anticipate the planning inspectorate will take around 12 to 15 months to analyse and examine our proposals. So we're expecting a decision around mid-2024. Now, should we be awarded consent in 2024, the earliest possible investment decision would be 25. And then we'll be looking at breaking ground and starting construction in early 2026. But the good news is that this project can still be fully complete, operational, generating clean green power to the grid before the end of this decade to meet those all-important government targets to tackle climate change and secure our energy supplies in the UK. I'll just hand over back to Anne, but as I do so, this is all our contact information. Feel free to scribble down any of those email addresses, phone numbers, and so on, and the free post address. Thanks for listening, and look forward to receiving your questions. Thank you.